Hello and welcome to The Habit Architect. I'm Michael Cups, your host today. The topic today is something that's really interesting, and how we're going to explore it is more so in the context of businesses. But I think when we think about sustainability, it applies to all of our lives every day. And think about, what does that mean? Well, when we think about building habits, what we're doing is not for today, it's for tomorrow, it's for next week, it's for next month, it's for next year. Think about longevity as a goal or a value that you want to support. You're building habits around longevity, whether it's your diet or your exercise or many other things that you may do for that longevity. Another example is maybe saving money. You put yourself on a budget, and you're not saving money for today, you're saving money for something in the future. That kind of practices sustainability in a way. Now, we're going to talk more in detail about it in the business setting, but I think that that's an important concept. And when we talk about habits, I'm going to mention it. Timebandit.io. I'd like you to go out there and look for the training bundle. We've bundled our training with our app and all the worksheets. And if you're in the US or Canada, I'll send you the book for free. It's important because what I hear all the time, I meet people all the time and they say, what is Time Bandit? And I talk about habits and they go, oh yeah, I read that Atomic Habits book by James Clear. Great. That's a step one, but they're not practicing it. And what I try to do in Time Bandit is show you how to apply the principles of building strong habits, building something for the future. And in the training, you'll get the values and the priority matrix around priorities and how you face days and so forth. So enough of the advertisement. Let's get on to the topic. I want to talk a little bit about time, because sustainability is the ultimate time management question. And we're going to visit with William in just a bit about this. But when you think about sustainability, it's what you do today to compound a better tomorrow. And so we're going to dig into that. Most businesses treat sustainability as an initiative. And unfortunately, depending on the administration that's in that those rules may change, and they may just use it as a checkbox on a compliance. But we've all been through those situations where our company is implementing something just to check the box, and they really don't serve anyone, and they don't serve the employees either, because the employees do feel strongly about certain things, and we need to build it in as part of our culture. And we're going to talk about that today. So the leaders that take it seriously, that make it part of the culture, are really thinking about their employees and their customers. Those that don't are just kicking debt down the road, whether it's kicking debt into the next quarter, to the next leader, to the next generation. So enough of the intro. I'm going to bring on William Pleasant, who's from Bridge House Advisors, a firm that helps companies move sustainability from concept to practice. Welcome, William, while he comes from backstage. I mentioned you can go find Bridge House Advisors at bridgehouseadvisors.com. So welcome, William. Hello, how are you?
Great, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, yeah, good to see you. I'm really looking forward to this topic and your expertise in it. Why don't we start with just introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, be happy to. So my name is William Pleasant. I'm the Chief Solutions Officer and General Counsel at Bridge House Advisors. Maybe I'll talk for just a second about Bridge House to start with. Bridge House is a full-service sustainability and environmental consulting firm. We primarily serve middle and upper middle market private equity firms and their portfolio companies. We're helping them sort of across what we call the deal arc. So that's everything from pre-acquisition due diligence on environmental and sustainability matters to program strategy, program development, ongoing program support, and compliance support on a day-to-day basis. And generally, these are firms that don't have large dedicated teams that are focused on sustainability or compliance. And so I mentioned I'm the Chief Solutions Officer and General Counsel there. That means I spend the bulk of my time really trying to understand and anticipate sustainability and environmental compliance challenges that our clients are facing, and help them develop solutions to address those problems. I've been doing this lawyer thing for over 30 years in law firms and corporate settings, and so that's what brought me to today.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, William, for that introduction. I'm curious, when did you leave the corporate lawyer? I mean, you're still a lawyer, but when did you join Bridge House?
So I joined Bridge House about 3 years ago. I was in big corporate for almost 17 years. I left in 2021 to start helping smaller companies with these problems.
Yeah, that's great. Good. It's great to have you. So let's start with the fundamental question. Why should a CEO or their complementary leadership team really care about sustainability, and why is it kind of urgent for them, or should it be?
Yeah, it should be. I'd say fundamentally sustainability should be or is about good, resilient businesses. And so what do I mean by that? Really companies should be recognizing and dealing with the risks to their business, whether those are legal risk, reputational risk, financial risks, excess cost, what we used to call profit leaks in the corporate world,
Yeah.
and focusing on revenue opportunities. And all of those things really play into sustainability. That said, the other big pressures we're seeing now, and you alluded to it in your introduction, are customer demands around sustainability,
Right.
but also access to capital as investors, uh, whether those are European
Yep.
limited partners in private equity firms or large institutional investors here in the United States, continue to focus on these sustainability topics.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so if you're ignoring if you're ignoring your customers, investors, you could have a problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that connection, but you're right. If you're trying to raise money and you're not doing the right things, then certain funds are going to eliminate you as a prospective portfolio company, and then
Yeah.
the consumer thing, right? Consumers don't understand the power they have sometimes when it relates to that. And
Mhm.
it's not just about buying from a certain vendor, but it's about all of the things, right? And it's just about awareness and things like that. So that's interesting. So you work with a lot of companies, it sounds like, at different stages in their sustainability journey. What separates organizations that kind of see that real transformation versus the ones that are just trying to create a compliance checkbox?
Yeah, I think it's really about systems or management systems that are integrated or embedded into the business. Yeah, it should not be a standalone program or a siloed sort of thing, but instead, sustainability becomes part of the company's DNA or culture, as I know you like to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'd say when a company approaches sustainability in this way, trying to develop a culture of sustainability, it really becomes focused on actions that positively impact the business or preventing actions that negatively impact the business.
Right. Yeah, yeah, and that's probably what we hear most about in the news. Unfortunately, is that
Mhm.
when there's a spill or some sort of leak into the environment or what have you. But there's other things that are positive in there. So when leaders connect sustainability to performance, can you tell us about that? Because there's when you talk about culture, everybody kind of has to believe in it for it to be real, right?
Yeah.
As we were talking about. So is there a business case for sustainability?
There absolutely is. There's sort of two ways we approach it at Bridge House as we address whether it's private equity firms or whether it's management teams at our corporate clients. First of all, we talk about money and we talk about sustainability using business terms rather than language that would only make sense to a sustainability professional. So we talk
Yeah,
about exit value, we talk about EBITDA, we talk about OPEX and CAPEX. We
yeah,
don't lead with a bunch of acronyms or sustainability jargon. Just to use an example, we would lead with, we think you could save money on energy, as opposed to, hey, let's establish a long-term decarbonization goal, right?
yeah,
Management teams understand saving money on energy before they understand why they should set a
yeah,
decarbonization goal. I'd say the other way we talk to businesses about this whole topic is to think about must do's and should do's. This seems to
yeah,
resonate really well with business folks. Must do's are really essentially the compliance tasks. These could be legal compliance, but also those customer requirements.
yeah,
If it's a requirement, you want to do that thing as cost effectively as you can. You want to do
yeah,
it right. You want to do it to the proper degree. But then you have another bucket of things that we call the should do's, areas where there's real value to be found. And there again, you think about energy savings or cutting your scrap or reducing
yeah,
employee injuries, those things that you should do because they make good business sense. And of course, these two things, the must do's and should do's, often create sort of a Venn diagram. And
yeah.
where there is overlap, that's where you should really focus your efforts. And that seems to really resonate with business leaders.
Yeah, yeah, I like that, and the must dos and should dos. I really like that. That's a good takeaway for me, at least. I'm going to get off our. We had talked about some of the questions I'd ask you ahead of time, but it struck me this morning. I was walking and I was thinking there was a big announcement yesterday that Google's putting $40 billion into data centers in Texas, Midlothian, which is
Mhm.
just a little south of Texas, Dallas. I'm sorry. I went home to Abilene, Texas, well, where I grew up at least. And there's 3 data centers going in, about $20 billion of investment going in there. Yesterday, I was reading about one of the local lakes, and I grew up, on a farm and ranch, and we were close to nature, and when we could, we would be at a lake. And there was one called Lake Abilene, and I saw pictures of it yesterday, and it's completely dry. There's not a drop in the basin there, not a drop in the basin there. And then I started thinking this morning about the data center pull on water. This is an interesting thing. I mean, it's good to have the jobs coming to Texas, the investment in Texas. There's all that stuff. But it made me really worry this morning about what's the balance, because if you're already having a drought-like symptoms, which is happens in West Texas, I mean, how are we gonna sustain that? You may not have an answer, but I'm curious if you think about where would we even think about starting that?
Well, I think this is going to be one of the big challenges of our age, Michael. I think when I sort of put on my academic hat a little bit, we think about these externalities that the current rules of the game let us play, or let businesses play. Somehow that's going to have to change. I do feel like, from what we see with data center clients that we have, there is some focus on trying to mitigate the impacts on water and on the energy grid. I mean, these are known problems. Right now, the energy grid just can't support the number of data centers that are currently planned. And if you look at the chart, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal last week about the unbelievable pickup in pace of data center planning and development. The electric grid can't support it. The existing water resources can't support it. And I'll also tell you, just anecdotally, here in Catawba County, North Carolina, where I'm sitting, we've had we are home to an Apple data center today, and just our county commission just rejected an application for a new data center in the county. People will start to push back, and so I feel like the data center industry will have to address the use of natural resources.
I appreciate that little tangent. It was just top of mind for me. I appreciate your perspective. You said it. I think it's one of these generational things, that the decisions we make over the next 10 years with this AI influence and the need for power is going to be impactful for our children and our children's children. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about company culture and sustainability. How do you see that relationship growing? And when you're consulting with a new firm and maybe they haven't really had this top of mind, is there a way that culture kind of can elevate?
Yeah, I think it has to, if you want to create a more sustainable business. And I think this is true about any sort of I'll use the word initiative that is important for a business. I know you talk a lot about culture being a collection of ingrained habits, and I'm completely tracking with you on that. An organization is just a collection of people. And so to create an organizational culture, what that means is you have to get people behaving in certain ways, thinking in certain ways, measuring their performance in certain ways. And so essentially, with sustainability, as with anything you're trying to create within an organization, you have to build those habits. I'd say a sustainable company is one in which the people are routinely doing the things that lead to sustainability for the business. They do those things routinely when you train them to do those things in a particular way, and particularly when you measure them in a particular way, right? When you measure the right indicators, reward or not behavior that matches up to the habits you're trying to develop.
That makes sense. And what would could you give some practical examples? Maybe you've got a new customer and they're starting their journey. What are some practical examples maybe that of the habits a company might use to grow their sustainability culture?
Yeah, I'd say the playbook is fairly well defined in the world of sustainability and compliance right now. I mean, we think about management systems similar to an ISO compliance related management system, the whole plan, do, check, act approach. And so the steps really are Really starting by understanding why you are doing sustainability. What is the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And I'd say as a business, this may change over time as you become more mature.
Hmm.
Secondly, and critically, the company has to figure out what's really important for the business. In sustainability speak, we talk about a materiality assessment or a double materiality assessment, where we're looking at what's significant for the business itself and where are the areas that that business may have external impact, positive or negative. But you have to figure out what's important.
Yeah.
And once you've
Yeah.
figured out what's important, then you can map out where you stand on those important topics and define where you want to be.
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
where it gets into the habit bit, I'd
Yeah.
say, Michael. But once you've done that, then you have to agree on how you're going to measure performance and success on those topics.
Yeah.
Build a
Yeah.
roadmap, put it down on a piece of paper or a virtual piece of paper to identify and prioritize what needs to happen.
Yep.
And then you just have to do the stuff and keep track, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
continue to reevaluate and refine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I put together two worksheets a while back on how to build habits and how to break habits, and you almost just describe the playbook for a company as I would for an individual, right? You first have to
Yep.
answer the why. Why are you doing
Yep.
this? Then you have to set up the systems, whether it's cues or triggers, to make sure that you're doing certain things, and then track it. I mean, that was how I
Right.
ended it. So the similarities are there. So what role can a leader play in this? Because I've been around companies, I've talked to other people I know that they say they're just doing something because they've got a new compliance director telling them to do it, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But can a CEO, a CFO, I mean, can they play a better role in this process?
Well, it really has to start at the top if a company wants to go beyond checking the box.
Yeah.
I'd say a siloed sustainability officer or director of sustainability who's brought in just to sort of do that box checking exercise will rarely be effective.
Yeah.
But as with anything important to the company, the leaders have to be talking about and promoting that goal.
Yeah.
And so, what we see, companies that are successful have broad support among the executive teams. They realize why they are doing sustainability. And once that message is delivered, then employees know that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
I'd say the other thing is supporting the policy framework and the ongoing management of a sustainability program, keeping it top of mind, communicating regularly about it. Those are things that leadership can do to make the company more sustainable.
Yeah, that's great, and it's practical. So, if a company's serious about embedding sustainability in their operations, what is the first step? I mean, they just called you, William, and your firm, and they say, "Help us with this." What is step one?
Yeah,
Is it you mentioned I won't get it right, material assessment, material
yeah.
something like that. I mean,
Materiality assessment.
one
Yeah,
or something else? Yeah,
yeah. I mean, normally if we're starting out with a company, we're going to walk through, and in many ways, the playbook we just talked about, we're going
yeah,
to ask the question, why are we doing this? And then we're going to go through this materiality assessment process to help the company really identify where they should be focusing their efforts,
yeah,
right? A good example is if you're a manufacturing company, then energy will be important to you. Health and safety of your employees will be important to you. If you're a consulting, a boutique consulting firm, energy probably isn't as important for
right,
you. Ergonomics may be important for you. Making
yep,
sure your employees' eye health is
yeah,
maintained may be important for you. But other areas will be important for you. Privacy, cybersecurity, those sorts
yeah,
of things. So you
yeah,
you really have to figure out what's important before you dive into developing a policy or building a roadmap. That's where we would start.
yeah, yeah. And where do you see that companies struggle? I mean, maybe they had the best intentions to get started, but the program just doesn't go where they expect it to go. What are those trigger points that stop them or slow them down? Maybe I should say.
Uh, what we see as the big challenge is the ongoing program management or actually
Mm.
building this culture we're talking about. Companies, we've certainly had it happen to us, and companies do this in many other ways. They say, well, we need a sustainability policy. So they just
Yep.
write a sustainability policy, or they get Chat GPT to write them a sustainability
Yeah.
policy. They
Yeah.
may even go through this materiality assessment process. I'd say less frequently, they'll put together a 1-year roadmap. But then what happens wherever they have gotten to, they just lose momentum. The regular cadence of putting these topics at the top of the pile, holding people accountable,
Yeah.
reporting on the KPIs or metrics, those those things fall by the wayside, and often that's even crazier when you think about that these are activities that make business sense, but
Yep.
they fall off the radar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, so we talked earlier about raising money or selling their companies, et cetera. We all see it. I mean, if you just read what you mentioned, the Wall Street Journal earlier, you listen. The first thing that's mentioned is earnings, right? The report about how they financially perform. They don't start the
Yep,
conversation with how they, sustainability perform. So,
yep.
how do you balance that short-term business pressure with the long-term sustainability goals?
So, Michael, this is the wicked problem, as academics would say, in sustainability when it comes to business, right?
Yeah,
Ultimately, return on investment, time value of money, these are
yeah,
math. I mean, this is math you can't escape, right? Even if you're creating a harmful externality or temporal externality, we talked about, the cost being borne down the road. I heard you mentioned it may be the next management team or it may be the next generation, but you've got this temporal externality that you're creating. And I'd say right now, for most of our business clients, as a practical matter, you just have to focus on things that have a short-term return or that make sense in the
yeah,
short term. I'd say ultimately, from my perspective, the legal and regulatory framework around us has to change in some way to drive different behavior. We have examples of this historically. If you think about the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act or the Occupational
yeah,
Safety and Health Act, these are legislative initiatives that change the balance,
yeah.
and probably that's what has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting to me how not to make this all a Texas conversation, but when the don't mess with Texas campaign came out, I mean it
Mhm.
was everywhere. There were litter barrels along the sides of the roads, with the brand on it and stuff like that, and it made a difference. It made a huge difference because I unfortunately or fortunately I've lived long enough to see the way it used to be, where people just were fine throwing out their garbage on the
Yep,
side of the street. But when
yep,
the state actually made a choice to think about it publicly, it made a big difference. Did it clean it up altogether? No, but it made a difference. And I take your point there is
yeah,
that even down to the city, county level, I think that they can make programs that help sustainability. And that's what we all strive for. We want where
yeah.
we live to be, where we enjoy. So I,
I think that's
how,
right.
how does that happen? I mean, how is
Yeah.
it, I hate to say, is it down to a single politician or is there a way that it can sustain?
No, so I will say, maybe just to go back a second, one of the interesting things we do see, and you mentioned this earlier, that consumers may have more power than they realize, but
Yep.
one of the interesting things we see with our clients is that there are a handful of large companies, uh, big retailers or cosmetics brands, or even in some cases, companies like tire manufacturers
Yep.
that are putting a lot of pressure on their supply chain because their consumer customers are demanding it. And
Yep.
so, in some ways, not to do some free advertisement for anybody, but Walmart has made a tremendous impact in sustainability by pressing their supply chain to improve.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, consumers are also voters, right? And
Yep.
that's where things start. I don't think this boils down to uh, a single politician or a single party. I think I happen to be a pretty hopeful, optimistic person. Uh,
Yep.
I think that any trend of improvement has blips, and I'd like to believe that we will continue to move toward a more sustainable business environment and a more sustainable world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just about thinking about it before you buy that particular product. It doesn't
Hmm.
nowadays. Research is at your fingertips all the time. So
Yep.
well,
Yep.
that's great. I really enjoyed the conversation, William. Thank you so much for walking us through that. It's not something that maybe some people would say sustainability and habits don't link, but I think they're so intrinsically linked. It's amazing. The more I thought about this episode, so let me ask you a question, just personally, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you have a non-negotiable habit that you do every day that you can share?
Yeah. So I try really, really hard to get in some sort of physical activity every day, ideally outside, if at all possible.
Yeah,
Uh, like you, I grew up outdoors, and so I love to be outdoors. It differs from day to day, depends on the situation, but pretty much every morning I'm walking my dogs or heading to the gym. So I
that's
admit I
great.
struggle some when I'm traveling. I know that's a
Yeah, yeah,
habit you try to
we
maintain.
all do. Yeah. The amazing thing about walking is you can do that just about anywhere. So, sometimes you can't, but
Yes,
most of
sir.
the time you can. So that's great. That's a great habit. So the other thing that I ask every guest, I've been talking about this concept of, tomorrow's more important than yesterday. And I'm guessing as a
Hmm.
sustainability business, you think about this all the time, but,
Yep.
what do you think about that phrase? And do you have a particular thought on it?
Yeah, I do. I mentioned a few minutes ago that ultimately I'm a pretty hopeful, optimistic person. I tend to believe that the arc of history bends toward justice in the broadest sense. I'd say as a society, we are where we are. Each business is where it is.
Yeah.
But I believe that over the long term, companies will continue to become more focused on sustainability because I think the people who make up those organizations realize how critical it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, and that's the work you do. That phrase kind of embodies probably what Bridge House is doing. Whether it's not your motto,
Yep,
but it's kind of that's what you're helping companies do.
eh,
So yeah.
for sure.
Excellent. So I think we had a ticker running across, but just real quick, could you share with how people can find Bridge House if they're interested in picking up a conversation?
Sure. So Bridge House, you can find us on LinkedIn or on the website bridgehouseadvisors.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with any of the listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, William, for spending the time with us today. It's an important topic, and I really enjoyed the way you framed the not just the responsibility, but the practical actions we can all take. So thank you very much for that, and for everybody.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And for everybody listening and watching, be sure to share the episode with others. And if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, just be sure to subscribe or follow or like, whatever their mechanism is, so you get notifications on the next podcast that we publish. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you very much, William and Bridge House Advisors.